Welcome to Women in WP, a bi-monthly podcast about women who blog, design, develop, and more in the WordPress community.
Hi, welcome to the show. My name is Angela Bowman.
I'm Amy Masson.
And I'm Tracy Epps.
Our guest today is Aurooba Ahmed, who builds WordPress solutions for small businesses and nonprofits. Welcome, Aurooba.
Hey, everyone.
We like to start off each episode by asking our guests to tell us about their journey into WordPress. How did you get started?
Okay, so this is two parts. One is super cliche. I was, a nerdy, techie teen person into manga, and I wanted to blog about all the anime I was watching and all the manga I was reading. And I tried a few different platforms, but I wanted something of my own that wasn't with something else. Then I found WordPress.org, and it was all downhill or uphill, but uphill is hard. So downhill from there. And that's how I found WordPress. But then a few years later, I think I was in grade 10, and my dad was starting this nonprofit with a bunch of his friends, and he needed a website. And he's like, you do that blog thing, right? Here's $50. Can you make us like a website thing? And I'm like, yeah, I could do that. And so I made this website. It was a child theme of the 2010 theme that had just come out, or maybe an earlier one. It was an earlier one, but it was good. It was a good one that was easy to customize. And I made them like something super, super simple. And then it was in the newspaper. Like, oh, Wonder Teen in Fort McMurray makes a website for a nonprofit. It was like on the head, like the first page, and that was kind of weird. But I was like, cool, people do this for a living. I could do this for a living. And I started a gig just like that in high school.
I am super impressed that as a 10th grader, you knew to make a child theme and not just start butchering the theme. How did that?
I'm pretty sure I did not start that way.
No.
So I think it was because I found the very first thing that I clicked on was something from WP Beginner, and they were all like, no editing the code, go make a child theme. And I'm like, oh, okay, all right, this thing says make a child theme, let's find out what a child theme is. And then I ended up in the codex. So I basically learned all of WordPress through the codex and not like other tutorials first, because I was like, okay, well, there's a documentation. It's the authoritative resource, and this is what I should use. And it was very hard and very confusing sometimes, but it was awesome.
Yeah, that hardly existed when I got started, and I don't think WP Beginner even existed. So
yeah,
it's certainly nicer now. What do you feel like has changed with WordPress in your time that you've been using it, and how have you grown as a developer?
Oh my God, I think WordPress 3 had just come out when I started using WordPress. And so it had just gone from like that old gray and white interface to like the colorful blue and the black. So when I entered, things were just getting like modernized. And I was like, this is awesome. And this looks cool. And then that was just when I had discovered Apple with the whole thing and when I got a Mac. And now it's like, I feel like we've started another chapter with like the block editor and everything that's coming now. So I was part of one small chapter that was like the second chapter of WordPress, and now we're in like the third chapter, and everything is again wide open, and it's really exciting because I know a lot, so I can actually take part in what's like, how it's going to happen instead of just being a consumer of it. So yeah, I don't know. I think it's about to get really, really crazy and cool in the whole WordPress industry with all the new changes that are coming. And with that comes uncertainty, but also I'm not very good at looking at the negative sometimes. I'm just like, yeah, this is so cool. And we're going to do all of these things and have all these adventures. And oh my God. And some of my friends in the WordPress community just look at me like, Aurooba, think practical. And I'm just like, I am practical.
What are you most excited about with it?
I'm most excited about full site editing, which I know horrifies so many people. It horrifies a part of me too, but I know that there will definitely be some way to make it so that people who don't know what they're doing don't do things that they're not supposed to. So I'm not worried. In the end, WordPress is being built by people like us who are kind of control freaks. So even when we give lots of access to other people, we will also have some way of having control. But I think that it's amazing, like just being able to edit the entire thing from top to bottom in the WordPress way and not the way like Squarespace or Wix work. It's like it's more controlled, but still open. And I love that. Yeah. So I've been playing around with it myself, and it's just blowing my mind with all the new changes that are coming.
Well, I mean, and just even because I've been like on this kick. Well, it's been many years, but
Yeah.
like maybe 10 years. Okay, so maybe it's been a while, but about having, because users, there's this disconnect because it's a content management system. Like they don't, like, where does this show up? That was like a big part of, like, anytime I test it or like see a client try to use it, they're like, I don't understand how this fits into the website there.
Right.
So, but like I could see the like huge benefit of having ways of inline editing. So like not only, you don't have to have that disconnect. It's the same as like you have small kids like natural at using like iPads.
Yes,
Because
they
like
can
that's
see.
just like, but we already had learned how to disconnect and use a mouse that was different in a different place than the cursor was.
Totally.
You know? And so we had to relearn and unlearn and that kind of thing. So I think that's a big part of it for me anyway, that I'm excited.
I agree. I know that the clients that I've introduced to the block editor already, they just love it because instead of having to constantly save draft and then preview and then save draft and then preview, it's all like right there. It may not be the exact same, but it's very close to what they would see. So when they visualize something better, most people are visual more so than anything else. So they just have a lot easier time. And so one of the things that I like to do for my clients is try to make the CMS dashboard as easy to use as possible. I will remove things that they don't need. I will change wording on things to make it so it's easier for them to understand. I will use their favorite colors for the dashboard instead of just the branding. I do all sorts of like crazy things for them. And more so now than I used to even before. I swear with every site I make, I do something more to the dashboard. But with the block editor, so many things, I just don't need to do them anymore because it's just there, and because they can see it, it's intuitively understood instead of me having to put in descriptions or explanation text. Like that's just not needed anymore. They understand that this is how you add an image, and this is how I can create a link, and this is how I can have a gallery, and I can just move things around to make the column smaller, or etc. Like I just love how much easier it makes for people who are not crazy tech savvy.
It's funny because that's almost like a talk I do about customizing the dashboard. And because like that's the terminology, I think, is the biggest. Sometimes it's just a matter of like, I don't understand what that word means, but I understand the concept. So like the client, the user might, totally understand the concept, but is confused by the fact that there's posts.
That's right.
Pages. Like, yes. I don't understand that.
And that it's a dashboard and versus a back end. So like most users say back end when they're talking about dashboards, but you think about like a developer who knows what a back end is, they'd be like, no, you're not going into the back end. Like you're not going to the database and all that stuff. And the user's like, no, like the stuff where I do the stuff, like that place, that's the back end. And it's just like so different the way they use terminology. So I now use the terminology that my clients use because it just makes it a lot easier on everyone. And I know what the difference is, but they don't need to know that. And it doesn't help them, and it doesn't help me help them. So whatever, they're just words. Who cares? Use what works.
You're doing a talk that will already have occurred by the time this episode airs, yes, with WP Engine with their Decode Developers Conference at the end of January. I'm hoping the sessions will be recorded and available to people, which would be awesome.
I think so. I hope so.
Yeah. So people who are listening to this episode can go to look up the Decode WP Engine conference, and you're doing a session on workflows. And is that like your workflow or workflows with including the client? And can you give us a highlight of what that session will be about?
Sure. So my session is me and two other people. Alan or Elaine, I'm not 100% sure how to say his name because I've never met him in person, and Rick, one of the co-founders of Flywheel. And it's very developer. The whole conference is developer focused. So the part I'm talking about is essentially all the tools that I use to combine together to create themes and plugins. So it's not going to be focusing so much on the kind of things that I do to make things easier for my clients. It's more about how I actually create super clean, super awesome code that makes my life easy and the life easy of anyone else who ever has to deal with my code, which I think is a very big deal, because so many people, so many developers, they create code in a way that makes it really hard for other people to interact with their code. And that can be a problem, especially if you're working for a client who's going to probably maybe has an in-house team or is going to go through more than one kind of developer. And just even coming back to your own code after a few years is like, that's kind of what my part of the talk is focusing on.
What is your favorite tool? Can you tell us a couple of your favorite tools?
Well, I love Local by Flywheel. I really, really, really love it, even before they were bought by Flywheel. Because before that, I used to use MAMP. And handling MAMP with like a gazillion sites that you have to constantly sometimes switch through, like it was a nightmare. I hated it so much. So that's definitely a tool I love. The other tool that I absolutely love is Gulp. Gulp is a task runner, essentially, right? It automates a lot of different things. So like for Gulp, I minify my CSS, I minify my images, I put all of the, like a compiled version of my theme into a different folder. I use it to sometimes commit changes in Git. It does like a lot of these different things as soon as I press save on any code file in my project. So the amount of things that I no longer have to think about is amazing. And it lets me focus on being a creative coder, because so many problems you come across challenging, and I can just focus on them instead of like the little details that don't really help you, but you need them in order for a project to actually be good.
So I love Gulp. I also hate it, but because I hate JavaScript. JavaScript just hates me. I really think that's what it is. But once I got over that hump of like, oh well, I have now a Gulp file that I love, and it just automates all these different things, right?
Yeah.
I started development before all of these things were around, so like I already had a working knowledge of like HTML and then CSS. For someone that wants to get into development now, how would you recommend that you tackle some of these things? Because the barrier to entry now with all of these new tools, yes, it speeds up development in the long run, but to get into it, what would you recommend for someone that wanted to start now?
So I want to preface that with that. Well, I don't know. Basically, I'm not going to talk about block development first, because block development has a crazy entry to barrier.
Yes.
And it's impossible to do it without Webpack, and Webpack is like a monster of its own. But aside from block development, any other kind of web development, I believe that the way to do it is to not worry about automation at all at first. There are very few things in WordPress or even outside of WordPress that you can't do without automation. You can do them all, and you have to understand them before you include automation, because what if your automation breaks? What if you don't have access to that? And that does happen. Or you don't have your machine because your keyboard broke down like mine did a few months ago, and you had to give it to freaking Apple, and then you have to use your husband's Windows computer that has nothing on it, and you don't want to like take away all of his games, so you can't delete things, and you still just need to work with a regular editor. Well, you still need to know how to make something work. You can't do that if you don't have a solid understanding of how to do things without automation. So automation it's like you use it because you can, but you should not be relying on it to the extent that you can't do without it. So even now, I would say, if you are getting into web development, the very first thing you have to learn is plain HTML and plain CSS. No, do not even look at the way of Sass. You don't even need Sass. There are CSS variables. So please just learn CSS. Please just learn HTML. And then, I love PHP because I think PHP is so readable. So it's like and Python. Those two are very good languages to start with. And I think that that should be the next step for most people. Not even JavaScript, although JavaScript it can be easy, but it can also be a nightmare. So I think the best thing is to start from these very basic languages of the web without which nothing can function even now. And forget about automation until you know what the heck you're doing. Yeah.
That's
which is
really
very
good
old
advice.
school. It's old school advice, I know.
I am old school, so I fully support this.
Yeah.
Back in my day, we used to write it on pen and paper.
I've been there. I've done that. My first computer science class was in grade 10 in high school, and our exam was all by hand. So you had to code by hand using a fake language called Turing, which is a great learning language, but it's fake. And you can't really use it in the real world. But it was a pain, but man, did I learn. So yeah, super old school, but super valuable, I think.
Well, speaking of 10th grade, so my brain's still going back to this, local teen makes website.
Yeah.
And I'm wondering, so you make this website, you're in the paper, and so after that, do jobs just start coming at you from every direction, or is there like a slow burn?
Oh, yeah, no, it was definitely not like anything immediate. Most people were just like, well, that's cool, a website. The reason they made the newspaper is because at that time, a lot of nonprofits, lots of people didn't have websites and didn't have any value for websites. So, but it got me thinking. And then when I went to university, I played with WordPress a lot more. And I knew how to code, but I hadn't yet started coding, like doing things with WordPress apart from like aesthetics, like CSS. And I offered to make a friend was starting an initiative for helping people vote. So I offered to help with that, and I built their website a little bit. And then someone heard about it. There's this random person, and we were at a party, and he comes up and he starts talking to me about websites and says, so you could do this. So I have a company and I need a website. And I'm like, okay, cool. So how much will you charge? I'm like, well, what do you want? And we had this conversation. This is the first time I ever talked to a potential client without actually knowing that I was having the conversation that would pretty much define the rest of my life.
At a college party?
At a college party.
And was there drinking?
Sure, but I don't drink, so.
Okay. But was he drinking?
Wasn't drinking.
Okay.
No, he was not. He was not a college student at all. I thought he was a professor or something. Okay, so I think like not a typical college party at all. I was in a dorm called International House in University of Alberta, and our parties were not like alcohol heavy. We had a very mix of like students from all sorts of ages. So it was a comparatively mature crowd. So there was dancing and there's lots of fun, but not like drinking and puking and red cups everywhere kind of.
That's a lot different than my college parties.
Yes. So a lot more. It was a very different crowd. Anyway, so this person, he walks up to me and we start talking, and I don't think of it later. And then later I get an email from an email address for a very, very large local oil company. And turns out this guy was the head of marketing for this company. And so I ended up making a website for them. And it was like a very big deal for me because like they were a very big company in our local area, and I'm not allowed to talk about them. Like I can't mention their name and stuff, but the project was like $20,000, and that was like the craziest amount of money to me. And I was like, okay, cool. And then he was actually the reason why I got other projects. He would just tell other people in his industry, and then they would hire me. So my summers were working for a local engineering department for my municipality, and also doing this thing on the side secretly without telling anyone. It was weird, but it was cool. And then after I graduated from university, I'm like, okay, I can do this. And I started my own thing. Yeah.
So you just graduated and started your own business immediately. You've never like worked for the man.
Yes. I had summer jobs, and I had a very brief 3-month stint at a bookstore, and that's it.
What was your major in?
Computer science.
Cool.
Yeah.
That's amazing. I'm just trying to imagine a world in which Like I'd never experienced working in like another industry or like having a boss and having to figure out how that all works. And just being my own boss right away, and how you were doing that in college. That's just amazing.
It was weird because, you know, when I say all of this now, it sounds really cool and like, wow. And she was doing all these amazing things, but this was just something that I was like doing for fun. And it was not even such a big deal. So I wouldn't even, like, most of my friends didn't even know I was doing this because it wasn't taking a lot of my time and I was mostly focused on school. And this was just a thing I did. And I thought it was fun. And I never thought that it would become, I thought I would go work for a regular company after I graduated, but then I didn't. And I was like, it's okay. And it's been, you know, running a business is very, very hard. And I've had, you know, all kinds of ups and downs, as I'm sure other people have too. And y'all know, but I love it. And I wouldn't trade it for anything else, really.
Well, that was going to be my next question, was when you're in college and you're taking this $20,000 job, how are you, you know, turning, you know, running a business? Because at that point, you know, that's taxable income.
I didn't know that. I've never been taxed on it. On that income from university, because I didn't know and I wasn't telling people I was making this money. And then I just, I used part of it to like help with school, and the rest I just like spent on books and stupid things.
You probably weren't making enough money for it to make any difference.
Yeah, I don't think so.
Yeah.
It wasn't like I think I think I was making maybe just enough that I could have been taxed on it if anyone knew, but people didn't know, so it never came up.
Yeah, and you're in Canada, which is different than the US. They know
the Canadian tax laws.
Well, I mean, I retroactively have taken care of a lot of that, but at the time, nothing. So.
But there's a lot to learn about that when you're running your own business. Like that was the most difficult thing for me.
Yes. It was a roller coaster, and I hate taxes. I hate them with a deep passion. Like I hate doing them. And my best friend, who was at the time also my business partner, she was the one who dealt with that stuff, because I was just like, I don't want to handle this. Just take care of it and tell me the number and I'll pay the number. That's it. But yeah, I think that was probably the largest hurdle, like all the stuff that isn't code and figuring that out, and about running a business. I'm still figuring that out. I can't say that I have 100% handle on it.
We all are.
Yeah.
I brought a stack of all my like bookkeeping to do this evening. Friday night is how I spend my Friday night. I'm gonna.
That sounds like a great party.
Don't you think? I know how to do it, and it is like I used to do accounting for a job, but because that's not where my head is, it's like I'll code till midnight, but like you want me to do my QuickBooks? Like you've got to be kidding me. Like my brain just doesn't want to go there, even though I'm capable of it. It's just too much to ask.
Yeah. I now do it in 5-minute stints.
That's a good idea.
Yes.
5 minutes and I put an invoice in there. That way I don't have to do it in bulk, because then I just hate my life. And
we're all probably like, I'm sure I'm stuck in a rut because I'm older and I'm just like really resistant to a lot of things. I've developed decades of resistance to things. So tell us, as a young, fresh business owner, like, what are your tricks? Like what is working for you that way in terms of the business part of your business?
Everything that I hate, I don't do for longer than 5 minutes at a time. That's probably my only trick. And I only learned that recently. Before, I would just like be like, oh, okay, put it off. But then I hate my life because I've spent 2 hours doing stupid stuff. And now I set the timer and I work on it for 5 minutes, maybe 10 if I'm feeling really good. And then I don't think about it until my next 10-minute thing. So I might do like 3 10-minute little breaks where I'm doing stuff I hate in a day, and I only do it twice a week, but then it's taken care of, because you can get a lot done when you're determined to only do it for only 5 minutes, but you give it your all in those 5 minutes. You don't like say, oh, I'm going to text my friend on the side for a second, or I'm going to like look at like Slack for a second while I'm also running this timer and doing my invoice. No, it's just this. If I'm doing QuickBooks, it's just QuickBooks. for 5 minutes, and you can get a lot done when you're that focused.
That's brilliant. I am totally gonna do the Aurooba method, is what I'm gonna call it.
And then I have chocolate.
See, the problem is I always skip to the chocolate.
No, you have to, like, I'm really short, so my husband likes to put it up really, really high somewhere, and then I have to go like drag a chair, maybe a ladder, then go get the chocolate. But I tell myself it's worth the effort after my 5 minutes of stupid QuickBooks stuff.
I'm really
I live
short
by myself.
too.
I can't do it. Just hide from myself.
Nobody has figured out to hide the snacks.
Oh, yeah.
All they'd have to do is put them on top of the refrigerator. I'd never see them.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. My husband does it a lot. He's figured it out for me. Now I use the trick. Yeah.
So at WordCamp US this year, we were all there and we were sitting in on the diversity workshop that you were a part of. Do you want to tell us how that came about and what the goals were and kind of what you think do you feel like it was a success? Maybe just expand upon that.
Okay. So I didn't start contributing to like WordPress aside from being an organizer for WordCamp and a speaker. Any other kind of contributions didn't start until like this year in May. And we have been trying to get some diverse stuff happening at our WordCamp and our meetup. And so we discovered the diversity speaker training group on the WordPress site a few months ago, like around May. And we signed up. We're like, okay, we want to do this training. And then I saw that they have these meetings and I could go to these meetings and find out more. And so one day I just attended a meeting and I got involved and I thought they were like really, really cool what they were doing. And Jill Binder, who leads that group, she's a really awesome person and really welcoming. And a few months later, she asked me if I wanted to help her run this workshop at WCUS. And the funny thing was I had been considering going to WCUS, never been. Before WCUS, I had never been to any WordCamp aside from my own. And then she asked me and I was like, this sounds awesome. I should do it. And so I said yes. And then Allie was also invited by Jill and then David Wolfpaw. And we started, so they already had a title worked out. They knew that it wanted to be about inclusive spaces, creating a welcoming space for diverse folks. And our job was to then create the content and the programming for this workshop. And the very first thing that we came up with was that we need a workbook. We need something that people can go away with and that helps them with tips and figuring things out in their own unique situation. Because the problem with diversity is that it's diverse. There is no one problem. Everyone has a different kind of problem. So we couldn't just be like, do this and this and this. We need to help people figure out what they need for their own challenges. So the workbook became like a tool. And so the entire sort of information, all the slides and everything came from this concept that we need to help other people have the tools to figure out how to address their diversity related challenges. So before you can do that, there is mindset. And that was like what I always thought about because I grew up with the saying, before action comes intention, or from intention comes action. So if you don't have the right intentions, if you're not thinking about this the right way, whatever solution you're going to come up with, it's not going to be correct because you're not coming at it from the right angle. So we decided that could come first and I could talk about it because I was super passionate about this concept of mindset. And essentially then after that, it was like, what are the different expertise of the 4 people that are involved? And so Jill talked about speakers because that is her main focus, diversity in speaker rosters. Allie is, as we all know, a champion for anything like for the allyship, essentially, as we like to call it, instead of allyship. And so she talked about that, and it just, it felt like we were like the really perfect fit. And I have to thank Jill for that because Jill came up, like she brought us all into this workshop, and all of us just had the right kind of very distinct, different perspectives that fit together really well to create something useful for everyone else. And we're looking to have this workshop in other places as well. and maybe also turn it into something self-paced that other people can take. So there's ideas. This year we'll be working on that. But I think it was a really, really important workshop, and I would love for more people to have exposure to it.
I agree.
Yeah.
I think the workbook was really I think it's really key, because
Yeah.
that is something, it's a process. It's not something like, oh, look, done.
Exactly.
I have been divorced. Right. No, like that.
That's right. That's right.
Absolutely. I love that.
And even if you fix or address one challenge, there's nothing to say that other challenges won't come your way, because 100% they will. And one of the things that I'll always think about is that even if you think there isn't a problem, I bet you there is a problem. You just haven't seen it yet. 100%.
Yeah, I really took it to heart, and I need to go dive back into the worksheets again. But someone approached me with WordCamp Denver,
Mm-hmm.
and something about Denver areas were 20% like Hispanic Latino, but that's not represented in our WordCamp at all. And
Right.
so the first thing I did is I reached out to Phoenix in Miami. And I said, what are you guys doing? And Phoenix was really great. They wrote back to me and said, here's all the people we try to outreach, and here's what we're trying to do. And I had a lot of questions like, do you have any Spanish language sessions? And how do you get, Hispanic or Latino speakers? And, how do you get more attendance? And then I haven't heard back from Miami, but what I did is I started just outreach with the local minority chamber of commerces. But I'm a one-woman show right now.
Yeah.
White girl. Trying
Yes.
to bring this in, but I'm meeting with the membership director of the Hispanic Chamber of Commerce for Colorado at the Denver Happiness Hour next week.
Cool.
Hoping just to start a conversation. I don't even know what to accomplish here, but I feel like that was at least the first start. Is let's just start talking to people who are in these communities with these business owners, and then open the dialogue. And I have no idea where it's going to go, but that was the best I could do to start.
I think that's a great first step. I would say the one piece of advice I would give you or anyone else who was going to be in this position is ask questions and then listen very deeply, because so you can ask all the right questions, but sometimes the answers from people, they're not going to be straightforward, and it'll be more about listening to what they're not saying instead of only what they're saying. Because even if you're asking the questions, even if you feel receptive, it takes time for barriers to come down, and no one is going to trust another person immediately with this kind of stuff, because it is a little sensitive. It is a little nerve-wracking to talk about it. And but it's really good that you're starting that dialogue, and you shouldn't worry about the one woman thing. Jill, when she started this in Vancouver, she was a one person thing, and now there's so many of us. So it takes just one person to open a dialogue, and then you don't know where it can go.
And you as a person, you're a Muslim woman.
Yes.
And not everyone watches the video. You have light brown skin. And speak to us about being one of these minorities in your community. And how, I know that you wrote to us in your statement that you have a different lens you prefer to look at things through. So talk to us about that.
Right. So ever since I can remember, ever since I've been in Canada, so I moved to Canada from Saudi Arabia. I was born in Pakistan, and I moved to Saudi Arabia when I was an infant. And then I moved to Canada, to Toronto, when I was 10, and I turned 11 in Canada. And at the time, everything was fine, not that many big changes. Toronto is super diverse, and I happen to live in a community full of people that look like me. Things took a radical change when my dad accepted a job in Fort McMurray, Alberta. Fort McMurray is a boom town, it's an oil town, very tiny town, super white. And only one school in the entire tiny little town had computer science option classes, and I wanted to take them because I thought they would help me, because I had already decided that I wanted to do computer science in university. So the school I was at was probably the most racist school ever. And because I was brown, they automatically assumed that I did not know how to speak English. And, I was obviously super dumb, and nobody would talk to me except for the other kids, the ESL kids. because the ESL kids were the only non-white people. And it was really weird and it was really frustrating. And I had never experienced racism like this ever in my life. And I remember sitting in a class and they were talking about me. I was sitting in the front row and they were talking about me behind me. And then I'm like, I can hear you. And they turn around and they're like, wait, you can understand us? And I'm like,
wow.
Like, this is grade 11. And I'm like, yes, I can understand you. I can understand everything. I'm Canadian. And they're like, oh, you're Canadian. Okay, we never would have guessed. And I'm like, and I gave them like a thumbs up because I was completely speechless. It was insane. And yes, but even after that, people would just not talk to me. But then when they did talk to me, all they had was questions. What do Muslims believe? Why don't you eat pork? Why do some of you wear a scarf and the other ones don't? Do you, why did you come to Canada? Why would you even come here? Like, is your country really bad? Is that why you came here? And all sorts of questions. So when you get so many questions, I feel like you go one of three ways. One, you deny everything about your differentness. Everything that makes you different, you deny it. And so if you're brown, then, I would say you got whitewashed and you become a whitewashed person. Two, you get super, super conservative and you stay super close to your roots and you want nothing to do with the people who are not like you at all. So that's like the super extreme way. Or you become kind of like me, who is, one foot in one world and like straddling sort of these two different worlds, or maybe three different worlds, a lot of different worlds. And you didn't want to be a spokesperson and you don't think of yourself as a representative, but somehow you became one. And you can either be super mad about it or you can just take it in stride. So first I was super mad about it. And then I was like, you know what? It's okay. It's all good. And, so when you're female and you're brown and you're Muslim and you're short and you're kind of loud and you're kind of stubborn and can be kind of aggressive, but I'm proud of it. So who cares? A lot of people will have adverse reactions to that. So there's three ways you can go about it in my world. You can be like, okay, they're kind of ignorant, but it's okay. Let me educate you. Let me tell you all the things that you should know. And I will be kind and I will be nice. And, and when I say nice, it sounds like I'm not going to be nice. But, I'm cheerful and I tell you what I think you need to know. Some people are, they're mean and they're demeaning and they provoke you. And then it's like, I will prove you wrong. You will wish you were dead. And I will be like, I won't say these things, but I will, like, if someone says I'm female and I'm a woman, so I couldn't be a good coder possibly, which I have gotten, by the way, then I would be like, well, I don't have to say anything to you. I'm just going to go and be a really freaking awesome coder and I will prove you wrong, buddy. Or the third is, you know what, this is not worth my time. So I will ignore you or I will walk away from you because your energy is like so not worth dealing with.
It's usually it's more about them, really.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. How someone reacts to you or everything someone says is more about them than it is about anyone that they're talking to. Even now, anything I'm saying, like, this speaks more about who I am than it does about the people I am talking to. So you can either decide to deal with another person's energy, and sometimes it's worth it. Sometimes if it's so crazy or if it's like, it's only a little bit, but you can tell they could be open-minded, it's worth handling all that negativity and, standing your ground. But other times it's just not worth it because there are some people whose minds you're never going to change. And so it's better. It's not effective. It's not worth it. We can just go and be ourselves and do other things and leave these people to their own wallowing in negative stupidness.
Well, especially if they're that far off, like women are not as good coders. Obviously, our uterus gets in our way. And I'm like,
yes,
I can't code. Oh, geez.
Yeah, it has these like arms and it goes into our brains and then it kind of squishes it or something.
Something like that.
Yeah.
Well, what I think is interesting is, or what I find in those conversations where you're choosing to have the conversation, to answer the questions and educate people, I feel like in those situations, it's less about educating that person, but it's about educating the people on the peripheral who are seeing it happen, but who aren't directly engaged. And I feel like those are the people that you're trying to convince. And I feel like it's about that with political arguments too. When I get in a political fight with somebody, which I do, it's not about their beliefs, because I'm not going to change their mind, but the people watching it from the sidelines, they might listen and have an opinion. And since I'm not coming at them, then they're more likely to maybe listen to what I have to say.
I agree. Also, the other thing is, it's how you're acting. Sometimes it's not even what you're saying. It's about like, they're watching you to see how you act in like, how you're reacting to how this person is being. That matters more. What were you saying, Tracy?
Well, I've done the same kind of thing, but like someone with the very ignorant views of something, and that I know that some of my friends that are in the queer community, or they're non-binary or something, and they see this, like I'll leave this comment or I'll respond in a way so that honestly, so like if someone's like watching this and they're like, I don't understand this about myself, I hate this about myself, and see all of these people hate this about me, but wait a minute, oh no, wait, actually, there's someone who's like me, or like there's that hope and stuff, like that's that same kind of, just to show up. I am the example of.
Yes, exactly. Yeah, just by being who you are and speaking about it, you become, I hesitate to say role model, but we all end up in that kind of position when we are like fighting or arguing or talking against like negativity and small-mindedness and extreme views. You become a person who is what other people are going to look at and then judge everyone like you based on. And it's unfortunate, but it is a thing that happens. And so it can be hard, and it can be a lot of pressure if you start thinking about it like that. I remember for a time, I just stopped trying to educate people, trying to talk about it, because it felt like too much pressure to be this person who everyone is going to think, okay, so this is what talking to a Muslim is like, especially when you were like, if you're surrounded by a lot of people and then they ask you these questions, you are not just you are now everybody who is like you. And that can suck. But if we don't do it, then nobody might do it.
I mean, and this is a good, reminder of that workbook that people can do this work, because it really does contribute, everyone to contribute to really make this improve.
Do we have that workbook available that we can put in the show notes? Do you have like a PDF of it? Okay. So listeners, we will have the PDF in the show notes. So look for those. Yeah. And I'd like to thank Aurooba for being here with us today. Before we go, can you tell us where we can find you online?
Yes, I'm at Aurooba everywhere. So AUROOBA. That's Aurooba.com for my site. Aurooba for Instagram, Aurooba for Twitter. Anywhere, just go anywhere. It's AUROOBA. It's the benefit having a unique name. Except for Telegram. Somebody stole it before me. So mad about that. But
yeah, I don't have that with Amy.
Yeah, thank you for having me. It was kind of fun.
Thanks for listening. Follow us on Instagram and Twitter, or join our Facebook group. We would be honored if you subscribe to the show. You can find us on Spotify, Stitcher, Google Play, and iTunes. Finally, if you want to be on the show or know someone who would, visit our website at womeninwp.com. Until next time.